Okay, this is the third time I'm making this recording. I think I have it. I think my wife and I have solved it. So, to the virgins to make much of time on page 408, and to his coy mistress on page 409. This is a couple of things to note. Just first of all, they're old, right? 17th century for both of them. So things were different then. We've talked about this in class. Some of these poems, of these short stories, took place way in the past, and society was different. One of the philosophies or ways of looking at the world back then, and even today, is something called carpe diem, C-A-R-P-E-D-I-E-M, which means seize the day. I'm sure you know this already. Look it up, get a handle on it. It means, it's very current actually. It means mindfulness, being understanding, stop and smell the roses, stop and smell the coffee, and don't keep working until you're 65 and then enjoy the life. Enjoy it now. Doesn't mean to give up on things, just means enjoy it and plan. Anyway, Robert Herrick was an older man apparently, and he was a very nice man, they say, in history, and he had some advice for these young girls. Now he calls them virgins in the poem. It's mostly to reference their age. They were probably around 14 or something like that. But of course there is that sexual connotation to this, virgin. So the idea of virginity is part of both of these poems. Anyway, let's just read through it. He's giving them advice. And one of the things that we might want to consider is the kind of advice he's giving them. Would we give this advice to our daughters today? So, first, he gives them two images. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may, old time is still a-flying. And this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying. We know about roses. We talked about roses with another poem in class, the sick rose. Roses are temporary. They're ephemeral. They bloom and then they die. And it becomes a perfect metaphor for life, right? We grow from a seed, we grow up, we bloom, and then we pass away. The second verse is about the sun, or the sunrise and sunset. And that glorious lamp of heaven, the sun, the higher he's a-getting, and the sooner will his race be run, and nearer he's to setting. Again, a classic, traditional, almost cliche metaphor of life. When we're born, it's the sunrise, and when we die, the sunset. What's interesting about this is that they are both two very natural things. There's nothing imposed on them by man, in other words, or humans. We can't help this. There's nothing you can do about the sunrise and the sunset, or a rose dying after it blooms. Just like in the story of an owl, you can't argue with the springtime coming and things like that. So he gives them advice. This age, he says, is best, which is the first, when youth and blood are warmer, which means when the blood is rushing through your body when you're young and vibrant and your face is rosy and all that stuff. But being spent, that is, the older you get, as you use it up, the worse and worse times still succeed the former. So as you go up, you'll begin to age until finally you get too old and then you die. All of this is natural. This is nothing. He's imposing on this, and that's the part where we can discuss, is the idea that the advice he gives in the next verse, which is, then be not coy, but use your time, and while ye may, go marry. For having lost but once your prime, once you lose that cute look you have, that beauty, you may forever tarry. So basically he's saying, hurry up, get married, girls, because if you don't, no one's going to want you. And like I said, sometimes in this day and age, in that day and age, if you weren't married by the time you were 16 or so, you may never get married. The word coy is very interesting also. It is one that refers to what looks like being shy. So if you go to a party and you see somebody who seems to be very shy, it's hard to know if they're shy or coy. The difference between the two is, to be shy is a personality trait. You really sort of can't help it. You can work on it. Maybe someone can say, don't be so shy. But it's not really something that you chose to do. It's just your personality. But coy, on the other hand, is deliberate. That is, somebody could say to you, hey, don't be so coy, which means you're deliberately sort of playing me or teasing me or leading me on, or whatever expression you want to use. So that's how he's using it here. Would we tell our young daughters in 2020 to hurry up and get married? Let's go. Let's get out there. No, of course not. You can get married anytime you want, more or less. And again, this is, again, for the class, for all of you, this is interesting because a lot of you come from different cultures and countries and backgrounds and religious backgrounds and things like that. So your opinions are all over the place, I'm sure, in this class. So what do you make of that idea? That, hurrying up and getting married and making it even a requirement. And secondly, the importance of virginity. Why is it so important to so many people in so many places in different cultures? Which brings us to the second poem, to his coy mistress. He uses the word coy in the title, sort of borrowing it from Robert Herrick, actually. And basically, all he wants to do in this poem is, it's an argument to have sex with some girl that he's met, a mistress, which would have been a big thing in those days. He would have to be asking her to do this, knowing full well that virginity is, people wanted to marry virgins, and if you weren't a virgin, you were damaged goods in those days. And so him asking her to do it was a very kind of a wild thing to do, but it turns out to be a very modern thing. I mean, this is what we do today so much. It's so common to not consider virginity as important as they did decades or even centuries ago. So he starts off by just the obvious logical piece. Had we but world enough and time, this coyness, lady, were no crime. So in other words, if I had all the time in the world, you could be playing hard to get, and it wouldn't matter because I'd have all of eternity. We could sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love's day. And he mentions a few places to go. I would love you 10 years before the flood. That's from the Bible. And you should, if you please, refuse to the conversion of the Jews, which means I'm going to love you until the stars fall from the sky. It's something impossible, the conversion of the Jews. It's called hyperbole, by the way, when you exaggerate something ridiculously. And then he says, my vegetable love should grow, which is another interesting way of describing love. When was the last time you talked about your love as being a vegetable love? But as creepy as it sounds, it's kind of apt. That is, it's good for you. You nurture a vegetable, you take care of it, you make it grow, you eat it, you have it part of your diet. It's good vitamins for you. It's healthy. So, just like so many other things that we've seen, what the argument is that this is a natural thing. Why are you fighting this? We see this with Louise and the freedom coming in springtime. We see this here. We see it in the Robert Herrick story. It's a natural thing. Losing one's innocence is a natural thing. Sammy had to grow up someday. He just grew up in the supermarket. Of course, the second verse is now, if we had all the time in the world, I'd spend it worshiping you, but there has to be a but. There it is, right? But at my back, I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near. But we don't have time. Time is clicking away. Boom, boom, boom. It's going. We don't have time. What are you wasting time for? And yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. The marble vault is the mausoleum. It's the place where they put the caskets, where the dead are buried. What are you waiting for? When you die, you're going to be put into one of these vaults, and you're not going to hear anything or see anything except the worms shall try the long preserved virginity. In other words, it's very Freudian, but the worms will have their way with you, if you will. And why have that the time when you lose your virginity? Why don't you do it now and not wait until you're buried 6 feet under? And then they will have your long preserved virginity, and your quaint honor turned to dust and into ashes all my lust. At this point, I should say that a lot of people have read this poem and right away think that he's a real macho, sexist ladies' man, a wham bam thank you ma'am type of a guy. It's not really the case. This last verse shows you that he's concerned about her. He wants to spend some time with her, maybe even have a relationship. He talks about we, us. He talks about now, under carpe diem, seizing the day. Now, therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew. Again, like Herod, you have that. He says the age is best, which is the first. Young, and this is what we're vital. This is what we're most young and vital. At every our willingness, a willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires, and let us sport us while we may, and like amorous birds of prey, rather than waste our time and languish. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball, and tear our pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. Thus, though we cannot make our son stand still, we shall make him run. The poems have us ask bigger questions about society. Why is virginity so important to us? Or why is it not so important to us in certain cultures and certain times? Should it be? What the heck does it mean? Does it make any difference? What about beauty? Is there a window for beauty? Do we lose beauty? Maybe we're always beautiful in some way. Relationships. Should you get married? Do you have to get married? Why get married? All of these things, as you already know, through the 20th century especially, have been called into question by a lot of things, from everything from single parenthood to gay marriages and all kinds of other things, nuclear families. And so there's a lot of things that have come into play and have changed since these poems were written that may be worth discussing, and then these poems could be used as examples of things, of ideas. So read them again, look up some of the words you're not sure of, and listen. It's mostly two men, because women didn't write poetry very much back then. They wrote, some of them did, but so you get two male points of view. It's important, the two. I mean, not two women writing this. We never hear from the mistress, and we never hear from the virgins. So I wonder what they would say to this. I wonder how they reacted to this kind of advice. In any event, it's a lot to think about. All right, so don't forget to send me your introductory paragraphs with a thesis, and to make sure those papers get uploaded on Blackboard on time. And we'll keep continuing. Keep up with the discussion board and everything else. Any questions, email me. And if this is the first video you've seen of mine, go back and watch the others. Catch up on things. We have still so much of the semester to work on. Anyway, that's it. Peace, folks. Wash those hands.